Hey everybody. Today I want to talk a little bit about the subject of the Holy Spirit and being appointed with Holy Spirit. This is kind of a tough subject because I'm going to speak from my heart right here. I was totally in. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. I believed it. I really never understood this part though. And I do think that when you're in a religion your whole life, you kind of tend to maybe alter some beliefs yourself in your mind and choose not to believe certain things. Like for me, I didn't believe everybody would die in Armageddon. I knew there were really kind, worldly people. I worked for this family. They were so extremely kind to me. I never thought that Jehovah would destroy them in Armageddon. I felt like last minute when Moses crossed the Red Sea, some Egyptians left with them and they were saved last minute. I just felt like that's how it was going to be. So this thing with the Holy Spirit and having been appointed with Holy Spirit, to me, I just couldn't really make sense to it, because if you as a person have an ability or a strength, it's still you as a person. So why we separate the two things, Jehovah from the Holy Spirit, it just didn't really make sense to me. And so I just kind of chose not to think about it a lot because it didn't make sense to me. But what I did notice were instances where it didn't make sense, especially when the elders would say this person was appointed with Holy Spirit when I knew they weren't good people, so to speak. So I have 3 stories regarding this where I saw the quote-unquote Holy Spirit at work, but it wasn't for good situations or good people, and you really start to wonder. So my grandpa, we lived next to the Kingdom Hall, and my grandpa had employed mostly witnesses, honestly. You know, you're in this religion, you're a very tight-knit community, so he tried to employ witnesses. He had one brother who was married with kids, shady as can be of a guy. We'll call him Robert. So let me tell you about Robert. Robert was working for my grandpa, and he already exhibited red flags, I would say. But one of the things that he was doing as a married Jehovah's Witness with kids at home, and I don't know if he was appointed even as a servant at this time, because I'm not sure about the timeline, but he would actually, we would call this sexual harassment. But back then, in the 70s, people kind of shrugged it off as oh, boys being silly or something. But he wasn't a boy. And even if boys do it, ladies, let's teach our boys better than to do things like that. And to also read the room. This is not flirting. This is really harassing young, women / teenagers and making them uncomfortable. So he would constantly try to open the bra of my mom and her twin sister during work hours all the time. And my mom and my aunt were afraid to be around him already because it made them so incredibly uncomfortable. Plus, you have to say this layer of being a Jehovah's Witness, where we're very not sexually experienced. So when a married man, does this to you, it just makes you feel horrible. Well, he kept doing it. My mom and my aunt, they were, I think, maybe 15, 16 at the time, and very, very, very pretty. So he never stopped. Even though their dad was the boss, he didn't care. He never stopped. He would be like, oh, I'm just joking around. Don't be so sensitive. I'm just playing. And meanwhile, it made the girls feel really, really uncomfortable. Well, how my grandpa's office was structured at the time was like the Kingdom Hall was right next to us, and their house was next to the Kingdom Hall, and at the time the office was downstairs, like the basement level, and then their apartment was on top of the office. And Robert was working downstairs in the basement, and everybody had to go on like a business call, so he was the only one, I think, working in the office at that time. And my aunt ended up being home alone upstairs, but she already felt like, oh, this is kind of uncomfortable, I'm gonna lock all the doors. So she locked herself in, and she locked her door from the inside as well, so that she could take a nap and not feel like anyone from the office downstairs would bother her, especially Robert. So, wouldn't you know, Robert, my aunt, wakes up from her nap, and Robert is on top of her, trying to kiss her, a married Jehovah's Witness brother, in a 16-year-old's bedroom, the 16-year-old whose dad is the boss. And Robert could not even help himself but to basically break into her room and sexually harass her. Now, my aunt, I will have stories about her later. She is not only feisty, but when she gets angry, she's violent. So he picked the wrong woman, and she screamed and fought him off, so much so that it scared him. She's very like a little person, but when she gets angry, I think she could lift a car. Like, the anger is real. And so he started to pacify her. Oh, it's just Uncle Robert. You need to calm down. It's just Uncle Robert. And she sees that he jumped up on the balcony, and the balcony door was open, and that's how he entered her bedroom. And this is a married Jehovah's Witness brother. That's pretty shocking. Well, at the same time, and we didn't even hear about this story till recently, we have a very good friend who worked in my grandpa's office at the same time, and he's always been like really good friends with my mom and my aunt. And so he told us about Robert, another story that happened. One day, Robert left his briefcase at work, and his buddy, our friend, we'll call him Bud, was gonna pick it up and kind of like, take the briefcase for him. And the briefcase opened, and out fell all this pornographic artwork. And Bud was just shocked. Bud, also a Jehovah's Witness, was like, what in the world? I mean, that's shocking for a J-Dub, right? I mean, and this guy, he was drawing porn, like hardcore porn. And so when you're a J-Dub, like, your mind kind of explodes. And it really bothered Bud. If you're a real J-Dub and you've trained your conscience, you know that that's not acceptable. And so it just kind of weighed Bud down, like, what is up? This guy is like a married brother, like, what the heck? But wouldn't you know it, just a short time after Bud saw all the porn artwork, Robert was appointed as an elder. And that was kind of the first red flag for Bud, our friend, to think, how would the Holy Spirit appoint Robert, who just drew porn? He had a briefcase full of porn, hardcore porn, that he drew. And this man was appointed by Holy Spirit to be an elder. Shouldn't the Holy Spirit know that he's a perv? Plus, on top of that, this was around the same time that he hit my aunt and broke into her room. And Robert had a major alcohol problem. At work, he had a file where he had a flask. And let's just say it was like Crown Royale in there. It wasn't, but I'm just going to use this name. He called it the vile Crown Royale, and he would sip from it during the day, and it was like his joke. Oh, my vile Crown Royale. Well, one day during lunch at work, he actually was so drunk that he totaled his car. And what does he do? Walk away from the scene and never got caught. He totaled his car, and his mom helped him out, cover up, buy a new car. And for the J-dubs in the office, that was pretty shocking to see. And meanwhile, this man was appointed an elder. Now tell me, how did the Holy Spirit get this wrong? Because this is pretty hardcore stuff. If you're a J-dub, you would see all of this as pretty bad and sinful. You shouldn't be appointed. You should probably be disfellowshipped, So how did the Holy Spirit get this wrong? Later on, I'm going to make a whole series about my aunt too, because there's many, many stories involving her. But in this instance, she was a victim, and she was legally a child. And later on, she got married to my uncle. And I'm just going to say this. They're feisty, and they're a little bit vindictive, too. They will never, ever forget, and they will hold a grudge. But they are Jehovah's Witnesses. It's kind of weird. But my uncle was always mad about the situation. Rightfully so. That was his wife. He felt protective. So years had gone by, and Robert stayed an elder, and wouldn't you know it, decades later, they run into each other at a convention. And Robert apparently was sitting in this special area for elders, and my aunt and uncle happened to sit nearby. And Robert said to my uncle, "Oh, you guys are VIP too." Which is a crappy thing to say, because if you're an elder and you sit in a special seat, you don't get it. And there shouldn't be VIP, not even for the governing body. Nobody should be VIP. Have we not learned from all the examples that Jesus told that Jesus despises this VIP stuff? Sitting in the best seats, thinking we're so holy. That's exactly the opposite. Like I always say, I think the main thing, what we can learn from Jesus is be kind, do not judge. The end. But anyways, it really triggered my uncle that Robert said this to them. "Oh, you're a VIP too, haha." And that was the moment my uncle put every single thing in motion to get this man removed as an elder. And he came forward with my aunt that Robert broke into the room and harassed her. And Robert was removed as an elder. And the brothers, removed him. They did do that. But they keep asking my aunt and uncle if they can now forgive Robert so that they can use him as an elder again. Which brings us back to that watchtower about, these kind of people and how they should never serve again. Except that's not what it says. It says they may never serve again. That also means they may serve again. It's written in such a J-dub legal way where we all as publishers read it like they may never serve again. And really it's they may never serve again. And here they're trying to use this man again. And I'm sorry, but this man's a creep. A total creep. My uncle keeps saying no. And my aunt, they're like, no. Because they will never forgive him. And in this instance, that's right. So the fact that they keep wanting to use this man, we don't need people like that to lead an organization where they're in close proximity to children. That is so dangerous. It's just really sad. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this episode a 3-parter, because that way it breaks it up a little bit with the 3 instances of Holy Spirit at work. And we're going to call this one quits right here, and we'll see you at the next episode. Bye.